The generator kicked in at 9:47 p.m., and I remember thinking, good, that's good. We planned for this. I was in the staff break room trying to get Danny to eat something. Chicken fingers from the cafeteria before they shut it down, the kind with the weird breading he actually likes from that Cisco catalog. 6 years old, and he picks tonight to be picky. My ex-wife would have had something to say about that, about me bringing him to work during a Category 4, but Melissa was in Tampa with her new husband and their perfectly evacuated lives. Dad, it smells weird in here. That's just the storm, buddy. Salt water and ozone. Like the beach but matter. I was trying to make it sound interesting, educational even. Dr. Raymond Voss, pediatric surgeon, father of the year. The Motorola clip to my belt squawked. Another minor injury down in the ER. Tourist who'd ignored the mandatory evacuation and caught flying debris. I was supposed to be off duty. Nobody's off duty when Hurricane Iris decides to park herself over Isla Maracha Key for 6 hours. The windows were boarded, but you could hear her anyway, not howling, that's too simple. More like the ocean had grown teeth and was gnawing the building from every direction at once. Marco Reef Memorial Hospital, 42 beds. Built in 1983 back when hurricane codes meant something different. The newer wing where we kept the surgical equipment, that was solid. The old wing where they'd stuck the psych ward and long-term care? I tried not to think about it. Danny pushed his chicken around the paper plate. He had his mother's eyes. These pale green things that always looked like they were catching you in a lie. Mom said you'd keep me safe. And I will. I checked my watch, Timex Expedition, nothing fancy. Melissa used to mock it. Said surgeons should wear Rolexes like they do on TV. Generators running smooth. We've got diesel for 3 days. Storm will blow through by morning, and we'll get you on the first evac boat to Marathon. You can tell Mom all about your adventure. What I didn't tell him. The evac boats were supposed to come before the storm hit. The Coast Guard had made that very clear in their 4 p.m. briefing. Last chance, people, after that you're on your own until it passes. But we'd had 5 critical patients who couldn't be moved. Mr. Nguyen with his post-op sepsis, still touch and go. The Hernandez twins, premature, on ventilators in our sad excuse for a NICU. Old Mrs. Baxter who'd stroked out that morning and would die if we tried to move her. And Trey Callahan, age 9, who'd need me in surgery the second I could get him stable enough to cut. Dr. Judith Kowalski, our chief of staff, no wait, her name was Dr. Patricia Whitmore. Goo, I'm tired. She'd made the call. Skeleton crew stays, everyone else evacuates. I'd volunteered because of the Callahan kid. His appendix had ruptured, and peritonitis doesn't wait for convenient weather. Plus Danny was with me for my weekend custody, and I thought, stupid, so stupid, that the hospital was the safest place on the island. Concrete and steel and backup generators. What could go wrong? The lights flickered. Dad. Just the transfer. Generator taking over from main power. Totally normal. I wasn't lying exactly. It was normal. The fact that it happened twice more in the next 3 minutes, that was less normal. My phone buzzed. Group text from Patricia. All hands ER. Now. I grabbed Danny's hand. Adventure time, buddy. Stay close. The hallway lights were dimmer on generator power, that yellowish emergency tint that makes everything look like an old photograph. We passed orderly Jamal Thompson wheeling Mrs. Baxter toward radiology. No, wrong way. Radiology was flooded according to the last report. Water had started seeping through the ground floor walls around 8 p.m., mostly groundwater pushed up by the storm surge. The old wing was taking it worse. The ER was chaos in that controlled way that emergency rooms get. Nurse Bridget Chun. Shit, no, her name was Bridget Santos. I really need to sleep. She was triaging a family who'd tried to ride it out in their houseboat. The dad had a compound fracture, the mom hypothermia. Their teenage daughter kept vomiting salt water. Dr. Nathan Park, our ER attending, was working the fracture while snapping orders. Ray, good. We've got water coming up through the basement access. Not much yet, but Monroe County just radioed. They're estimating a 15-foot surge peak around midnight. We're at 13 feet elevation. Basic math. 2 feet of margin. Sandbags? Already deployed. But that's not Ray. We lost contact with Marathon Emergency Management. Last thing they said was the bridges are compromised. No evac boats until morning at earliest, possibly longer. Danny's hand tightened in mine. 6 years old, but he'd heard that just fine. Patricia appeared from the direction of the surgical wing, still in her scrubs from the emergency cholecystectomy she'd done that afternoon. Her gray hair was escaping its bun, and she had that look, the one doctors get when they're about to deliver bad news and trying to decide how honest to be. Ray, take Danny to the staff lounge on 3. Better windows, further from the flood zone. Bridget, your boys are already up there with the Callahan family. She noticed my expression. We're consolidating everyone non-essential to the upper floors. Precautionary. What aren't you telling us? She pulled me aside, lowered her voice. Danny was watching, though, those green eyes missing nothing. Monroe County Emergency Services has been in contact with the CDC since this morning. They didn't want to cause a panic, but apparently there's been chatter about some kind of prion issue in the hospital wastewater. They were supposed to send a team after the storm, but now, she gestured vaguely at the ceiling, meaning the hurricane, meaning everything falling apart. Prion? Like mad cow disease prion. They weren't specific. Could be nothing, you know how careful the CDC gets. But they flagged our facility specifically, wanted us to monitor any unusual neurological presentations in patients over the last 48 hours. I thought about Mrs. Baxter's stroke, about Mr. Nguyen's confusion earlier, which we'd attributed to sepsis, about the Hernandez twins attending mentioning something odd in their reflex tests this morning. But then the storm prep had eaten everyone's attention. You're thinking it's real. I'm thinking we follow protocol. Everyone upstairs except essential staff. If the water keeps rising and we have to evacuate to the roof, I want people organized. She paused. They also said to avoid any contact with contaminated fluids, bodily or otherwise. The generator hiccuped again. The lights dropped to maybe 60%, and in that dimness I saw something I'll never forget. Water, dark and thick, creeping under the ER entrance doors. Not seeping anymore, creeping, like it was testing the space, looking for the gaps. And it smelled wrong, not like ocean water or even sewage, like meat left in a hot car, like something organic dissolving. Danny tugged my hand. Dad, what's that black stuff? I picked him up. He was getting big for it, would complain any other time, and started toward the stairs. Just storm water, buddy. Let's go find you that better waiting room. Okay? The one with the good view. Behind me, I heard Nathan Park start to say something about the houseboat family, about the daughter, about how her pupils weren't reactive and her temperature was spiking despite the hypothermia, but Patricia cut him off with some medical jargon I pretended not to understand. The stairwell smelled better. Concrete and industrial cleaner. Artificial. Safe. I took the steps 2 at a time, Danny bouncing against my shoulder, and tried not to think about how the hospital was built on filled dirt over limestone honeycomb over sea, and how 15 feet of surge would put us underwater up to the second floor windows, and how we just heard that no evac boats were coming. At the 3rd floor landing, I stopped, set Danny down, knelt so we were eye level. Listen, I need you to be brave tonight, okay? Like when you got your stitches last year, remember? You didn't cry even though it hurt. I cried a little. A little's okay. Tonight might be scary, but I need you to remember. Dad's a doctor. This is my hospital. I know every room, every exit, every supply closet. If anything goes wrong, and it won't, I'll keep you safe. That's my job. Not just surgeon stuff, but dad stuff. You understand. He nodded, but those eyes that caught lies. Dad, what if the wrong thing already happened and we just don't know yet? 6 years old. Christ. Then we'll figure it out together. Come on. The third-floor lounge was crowded but organized. Bridget's boys, twins, 8 years old, loud as hell normally, were quiet in the corner with their tablets, hurricane footage muted. The Callahan family. Trey laid out on a gurney we'd wheeled up, his parents hovering. Mr. Callahan was a shrimper, hands scarred from hooks and net lines. Mrs. Callahan taught at the elementary school, had probably taught half the kids in this room. 3 other staff families. A handful of off-duty nurses who'd been caught by the storm's sudden turn. And on the far side, Mr. Nguyen in a wheelchair. Still had his 4-pole, still looked gray. But upright, conscious. That was good. Patricia had beaten us upstairs somehow, was already organizing people, assigning spots. Ray, you and Danny take the northeast corner. Windows are reinforced there. Bridget, your family's next to. The lights died. Not flickered. Died. Complete, absolute darkness for 3 full seconds before the emergency lights kicked in. Those dim red things that make everyone look like they're already bleeding. Then the backup batteries for those, even dimmer, scattered at floor level. Someone's kid started crying. The Callahan boy moaned. His pain meds were wearing off and I needed to check his vitals, but first I had to make sure Danny was okay. Had to make sure my own kid was safe before I could be Dr. Voss again instead of just Dad. And wasn't that the whole problem? Wasn't that why Melissa left? Because I could never quite figure out which role to play when? Generators down. Nathan Park's voice from the doorway, calm as if he was commenting on the weather. Breakers tripped, maybe the fuel line flooded. Jamal and I are going down to check. We've got flashlights and maybe 20 minutes of battery backup for critical equipment. 20 minutes? Mrs. Callahan's voice pitched high. What about Trey's monitors? What about? We'll get it running. Nathan disappeared. I found Danny in the red darkness, pulled him close. His heart was hammering against my chest, or maybe that was mine. The hurricane's voice was louder now without the building's hum to mask it. Shrieking, tearing. I thought about the old wing, about Mrs. Baxter and the other immobile patients we'd had to leave on the lower floors because we couldn't move them all, and I thought about prion, about infectious proteins that couldn't be killed by any normal sterilization, and I thought about that smell in the water. And then I thought about how Mr. Nguyen was sitting up in his wheelchair maybe 15 feet away, and how his sepsis had been getting better this afternoon, not worse, so why was he up here with the non-critical cases instead of on a monitor downstairs? Patricia appeared beside me, close enough that I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. Ray, I need you to listen very carefully and not react. When I checked on Mr. Nguyen 10 minutes ago, his temperature was 104. His labs from this morning showed encephalopathy markers we initially attributed to sepsis. But his infection was responding to antibiotics. The fever shouldn't be spiking. And Ray, his family told me he's been talking about the water. About wanting to go to the water. He's been on a second-floor room, windows sealed, hasn't been anywhere near. A crash from downstairs. Glass, lots of it. Then shouting. Then screaming. Not scared screaming. Not hurt screaming. Hungry screaming. And under it, through the floor, the sound of water rushing in. The emergency lights gave maybe 6 feet of visibility, enough to see Danny's face go pale, enough to see Mr. Nguyen stand up from his wheelchair without using his hands. Just rose, smooth, like his septic blood pressure and post-op weakness were irrelevant. The 4-pole clattered over. Everyone stay calm. Patricia's command voice, the one she used during codes. We're going to. Mr. Nguyen's head tilted, not like he was listening, like he was adjusting to a frequency. His jaw worked, mouth opening and closing, and in the red dimness I saw something dark on his lips. Not blood, thicker, that same wrong black as the water under the ER doors. I shoved Danny behind me. Mr. Nguyen, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Voss, you remember? We've been treating your infection. His eyes found me, Pupils blown so wide there was no white left, just black pits reflecting the emergency light. And he smiled like I'd told the world's funniest joke. Then lunged. Patricia yanked a crash cart between us, and Mr. Nguyen hit it with enough force to send medication vials flying. Bridget grabbed her boys, pulling them toward the far corner. The Callahans clustered around Trey's gurney. Other families scattered, no plan, just animal panic. The door. I grabbed Danny with one hand, a supply shelf with the other, hauled us both toward the hallway. Patricia was right behind me, and Bridget with her twins, and Mr. Callahan carrying Trey while his wife supported the four-pole. We stumbled into the corridor, and I slammed the door, held it. "There's no lock." Bridget's voice cracked. "Ray, there's no lock on these rooms. They're patient lounges, they're not." Something hit the door from inside. Heavy. Wrong fast. Mr. Nguyen had been in late septic shock 6 hours ago, could barely lift his arms. Now he was hitting the door hard enough to rattle my teeth. Fire stairs, north end. Patricia was already moving, her phone out, flashlight on, showing me she still had battery at least. We get to the roof, we radio for help, More screaming from downstairs, multiple voices, and then sounds I couldn't quite process, wet slapping like meat hitting tile, dragging noises. The hurricane's shriek masking everything and revealing nothing. We ran. The north fire stairs were supposed to be our primary evac route, fire code perfect, nitrogen pressurized to keep smoke out. I hit the door and it opened 6 inches before jamming on something. Through the gap, darkness and water and that smell. "South stairs," I gasped. Danny's hand in mine was slippery with sweat or fear or something worse. "Come on." The hallway stretched forever in Patricia's flashlight beam. Empty nursing stations, open patient rooms with empty beds. No, not all empty. In one room, a shape was sitting up, moving wrong, head tracking our movement like a security camera. I pulled Danny past, didn't look back, kept counting doorways until we hit the junction. The south stairwell door stood open. Emergency lighting showed steps going up and down. I could hear water on the lower floors, rushing through burst pipes or broken windows or both. Could hear other things in that water. Splashing. Moving. "Up," Patricia ordered. "Roof access, it's our only." "Wait." Nathan Park appeared from a side corridor, Jamal Thompson with him. Both soaked, both bleeding from a dozen small cuts. Nathan's left arm hung wrong. "Don't go down. Don't go anywhere near the first floor. They're in the water. The patients from the old wing, Christ, they're in the water and they're not drowning, they're changing," Jamal finished. His voice was steady but his hands shook. "The ones who were already sick. It's doing something to them. Mrs. Baxter, she was in her stroke coma. Now she's in the ER bay moving faster than I can run. The houseboat family, the daughter, she went first. Bit her father. He changed in maybe 90 seconds. Now the mothers." A wet cough from the stairwell below, then footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming up. We backed away from the door. Patricia aimed her flashlight down the stairs and immediately wished she hadn't. I saw her face go white, saw her hand shake, and I knew I shouldn't look, but I looked anyway. Mrs. Baxter, or what used to be Mrs. Baxter, climbing the stairs on all fours, her hospital gown plastered to her body with that black water. Her mouth stretched into something that wasn't a smile but showed too many teeth. Behind her, other shapes. The houseboat father. 2 orderlies I recognized from the night shift. All of them wet. All of them moving with that same wrong smoothness. All of them looking up at us with those blown pupil eyes. "Roof," I said. Grabbed Danny, started up. The others followed. For flights, my legs burned. Danny weighed nothing and everything. Behind us, below us, the sound of multiple feet on concrete stairs. Not running, not yet, just following, patient, like they knew we had nowhere else to go. The roof access door was supposed to be unlocked during emergencies. Fire code, again, but the handle wouldn't turn. Electronic lock, dead with the power. I slammed my shoulder into it once, twice, while Patricia dug through Jamal's pockets for a maintenance key that didn't exist, and Bridget's boys cried, and the Callahans huddled around Trey's fading consciousness, and the footsteps got closer. Move! Nathan, one arm broken but still functional enough to pull a fire extinguisher from the wall bracket. He swung it like a sledgehammer once, twice, and the lock mechanism shattered. We spilled onto the roof into pure hurricane hell. The wind nearly took Danny from my arms. Rain hammered horizontal, each drop a nail gun. I could barely see the roof surface, much less the edge. Patricia's flashlight was useless out here, beam swallowed by the storm. Stay low. I crouched, crab walked toward what I thought was the center, away from the edges. Found the roof access housing, a concrete block maybe 6 feet square. Some shelter from the wind. Pressed Danny against it, covered him with my body. The others clustered around. 8 of us. Me and Danny, Patricia, Nathan and Jamal, Bridget and her twins, the Callahans with Trey. 9 people on a roof in a Category 4, with God knew what coming up through the broken access door. Radio, Patricia shouted over the wind. Maintenance shack, northwest corner. Emergency equipment. We can signal. I'll go. Nathan, already moving before anyone could argue, disappeared into the rain and darkness. I counted seconds, lost track after 50. The storm was so loud I couldn't hear if there were footsteps in the stairwell, couldn't hear if things were coming up, couldn't hear anything but wind and rain and the building groaning under the pressure. Danny's lips moved against my ear. Dad, I'm scared. Me too, buddy. Me too. Honest, probably shouldn't be, but I was done lying to him. Done pretending I had answers or plans or any clue how to fix this. We were stuck on a roof in a hurricane with people, patients, who'd turned into something else hunting us from below, and I'd brought my son here thinking it was safe. Some doctor, some father. Nathan came back, dragged something heavy. Emergency radio pack, military grade, waterproof. His broken arm wasn't stopping him. Adrenaline's a hell of a drug. He got it open, started working the frequency dial, and I heard miracle of miracles, static. Then voices. Coast Guard Station Isla Maracha. This is Monroe County Emergency. Do you copy? Nathan grabbed the handset. This is Dr. Nathan Park, Marco Reef Memorial Hospital. We have 9 people trapped on the roof, multiple casualties below, requesting immediate evacuation. Static. Wind. Then, Dr. Park, we copy. Be advised all emergency services are grounded until wind speeds drop below 40 knots. Current conditions show sustained 65 with gusts to 90. Cannot launch. Repeat, cannot launch. What is your situation? Nathan looked at Patricia. Patricia looked at me. I looked at my son, whose 6-year-old face had no business wearing that expression. Old, tired, knowing. Sir, we have a contamination situation. Patients are exhibiting extreme aggression and altered behavior following exposure to floodwater. CDC was flagged about possible prion contamination in our system earlier today. We believe it's in the storm surge. It's changing people. Long silence. Then a different voice, older, more official. Dr. Park, this is Commander Reyes, District 7. Say again your last. You're reporting a biological contamination. Yes, sir. Waterborne pathogen, unknown vector, extremely rapid onset. Subjects show cessation of higher brain function, increased aggression, apparent immunity to pain response. It's Jesus Christ, it's like rabies on steroids. We've lost at least 12 staff and patients in the last 30 minutes. Copy that. We're contacting CDC now. In the meantime, do not Do not allow any contact with contaminated water or affected subjects. Barricade your position and wait for extraction. We'll get to you as soon as conditions allow. Monitor this frequency. Coast Guard out. The radio crackled into silence. How long? Bridget asked. Her boys were pressed against her, and she was trying so hard to be calm for them, to be the strong nurse mom. How long until conditions allow? Patricia checked her watch. Storm's supposed to peak at midnight. We're 90 minutes out. Then maybe 2 hours for the wind to drop below safe flight threshold. Then however long it takes to mobilize a helicopter that's not responding to 100 other emergencies. Best case? Dawn. That's 8 hours, Mr. Callahan said. His son was unconscious now, fever taking him under. We needed to get Trey to surgery, needed to pump him full of antibiotics and hope his ruptured appendix hadn't killed him already. 8 hours might as well be 8 years. We can't hold this position for 8 hours. We don't have a choice. Patricia's voice was flat. The entire ground floor is flooded. The second floor's compromised. Anyone who wasn't already evacuated to 3 or higher when the power died is either dead or changed. We stay here, we wait, we... A hand grabbed the roof access door frame from inside. We all saw it. Pale fingers, too many joints, curled wrong. Then another hand. Then Mrs. Baxter's face. That stroke-slack expression replaced by something sharp and aware and hungry. Her eyes found us across the wind and rain. She smiled and pulled herself onto the roof. Mr. Callahan moved first, set Trey down gentle, grabbed a piece of broken antenna from the roof debris, and swung it like he'd spent his life fighting. Maybe he had. Shrimpers aren't soft. The antenna caught Mrs. Baxter in the temple, should have knocked her cold. She barely staggered. Then she was on him. I shoved Danny toward Bridget. Hold him. Don't let him see. Then I grabbed Patricia's flashlight, the only weapon I had, and ran at Mrs. Baxter while Nathan and Jamal tried to pull her off Callahan. She had his shoulder in her teeth, and the sound, God, the sound was wrong. Not biting, drinking, pulling something out of him in wet gulps. I hit her skull with the mag light, heard bone crack. She didn't let go. Nathan kicked her ribs, heard them break, and still she held on. It wasn't until Jamal got both hands on her jaw and physically wrenched it open that she released, stumbling back toward the stairwell. Callahan clutched his shoulder, blood mixing with rainwater. Trey, he gasped. Get Trey somewhere safe. Get him. Don't touch anything, Patricia ordered. Already had her phone out, trying to see the wound in the flashlight beam. The water, the saliva, it's all contaminated. We need to. Mrs. Baxter straightened. The broken ribs, the fractured skull, didn't matter. She tilted her head like before, listening to something we couldn't hear, and then she retreated down the stairs, just backed away, calm as anything. Why did she? Bridget started. Because she's getting help, I said. Thought about how the ones downstairs had moved together, coordinated like a pack, like they were connected to something bigger than individual thought. She's going to bring more of them. Then we run, Nathan said. There's got to be another way down, a fire escape, There isn't. Patricia's voice was dead. This hospital has 2 stairwells and 1 elevator shaft. That's code in the keys. We're surrounded by water on 3 sides. Buildings built for hurricanes, not zombie movies. There's no secondary. Stop. I held up a hand. Something she said had triggered a thought. A memory from the hospital renovation plans I'd reviewed back when I first joined staff. The elevator shaft. It goes all the way down to the basement level, emergency access to the old generators. If the shaft's not flooded, we could. Could what? Nathan gestured at Trey, at Bridget's 8-year-old twins, at my 6-year-old son. Climb down 5 stories in the dark with kids? Through a shaft that's probably full of water and those things? You have a better idea? No one did. I went to Danny. Bridget had him wrapped in her arms, turned away from where Mr. Callahan was bleeding. I knelt down, pulled my son close. "Remember when we went to Fun Spot last summer? The rock climbing wall? You made it all the way to the top. Dad, that had safety ropes and this has me. I'll be right there with you. We're gonna climb down the elevator shaft to the basement, then get to the ambulance bay. The water's high but not that high on the east side. We can wade through if we have to, get to higher ground inland." I was making this up as I went. Had no idea if the basement was flooded or if the ambulance bay was still accessible or if we'd make it 10 feet before those things caught us. But staying on the roof meant dying slow. "I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Those green eyes, his mother's eyes, seeing right through me. Will Mr. Callahan turn into one of them? I wanted to lie, wanted to say no, he'd be fine, modern medicine could fix anything. But I'd seen how fast the houseboat family had changed. Seen Mrs. Baxter go from comatose stroke patient to apex predator in minutes. "Probably," I said. "Yeah, probably he will. Then we have to leave him behind. 6 years old." "No," I said, though everything logical in my doctor brain was screaming yes. "No, we don't leave people. Not ever. We get everyone out or no one. Even if it kills us?" I didn't have an answer for that. Patricia made the decision for me. "Callahan, you're staying. You and your wife. Someone needs to be here when the Coast Guard arrives. Give them the situation. We'll send help as soon as we reach ground level." Mrs. Callahan started to protest, but her husband grabbed her hand with his good arm. He knew. They both knew. He had maybe an hour before the infection took him, less if we were unlucky. Staying meant his wife stayed too, meant she'd be here when he changed, meant she'd probably die trying to stop him or die not stopping him. But it also meant they were together with their son until the end. "Keep Trey safe," Callahan said to me, to Patricia, to all of us. "Whatever it takes. Promise me." We promised. What else could we do? The elevator doors were on the 3rd floor, pried open by maintenance during the power outage. Patricia's flashlight showed the shaft descending into darkness, cables and service ladder running down the left side. The shaft smelled like oil and rust and that underlying rot meat smell that was everywhere now. "I'll go first," Nathan said. "One arm broken but still moving. Test the ladder, make sure it's stable. Then the kids. Then adults. We move steady, no rushing, and for God's sake hold on tight." He swung into the shaft, found the ladder, started down. His flashlight bobbed below us, getting smaller. We waited, counted seconds. Hurricane wind howled through the elevator shaft like it was designed to amplify sound. Then Nathan's voice, echoing up. "Ladder's solid. Water starts at the 2nd floor level, maybe 3 feet deep. Bring them down." I looked at Danny, at Bridget's twins, at Trey, unconscious on a backboard we'd have to lower with climbing rope we didn't have. This was insane. We'd drop someone, or the ladder would fail, or the water would be deeper than Nathan thought, or the things would be waiting below, or. But staying on the roof with Mrs. Baxter and whatever she was bringing meant definitely dying. This was just probably dying. "Okay," I said. "Danny, you're with me. We'll go down together. I'll be right below you. You slip, I catch you. You get tired, we rest. Simple." He nodded. Didn't believe me. Knew I was lying. Did it anyway because he trusted me and because what other choice did a 6-year-old have? I helped him onto the ladder, positioned myself below him, one hand on the rungs, one hand ready to catch him if he fell. Started down. The shaft was tight, barely wide enough for an adult. The ladder was slick with condensation and rust. Every few rungs I'd feel one shift, metal fatigued or bolts loose, and I'd have to guide Danny past it while my heart tried to climb out of my throat. Above us, Bridget with her twins, then Jamal and Patricia lowering Trey's backboard on a makeshift rope harness. Below us, Nathan's flashlight in the water, reflecting off walls covered in something dark and organic. Danny's hand slipped. I caught his ankle, held him against the ladder while he scrambled for grip. I got you, buddy. Just breathe. I can't, Dad, I can't. Yes, you can. Look at me, not down at me. 3 more rungs and we're at the 2nd floor. We can rest there. Just 3 more. Count with me. 1. We counted, made it to the 2nd floor landing. I pulled Danny onto the concrete, held him while he shook. My own hands weren't much better. Patricia and the others were still above us, working Trey down inch by inch. The backboard kept catching on the ladder brackets. Nathan sloshed through the water toward us. Basements flooded but passable. Saw movement down there, but it's hard to tell what. A scream from above. Not the hurricane. Human. Terrified. I looked up the shaft. Saw Bridget's flashlight beam swinging wild. Saw her boys clutching the ladder. Saw Jamal's legs kicking at something. Then saw Mrs. Baxter, or what used to be Mrs. Baxter, pulling herself over the elevator shaft edge, reaching for the ladder, reaching for Jamal. Climb! Patricia's voice. Everyone climb now. But we couldn't. Trey's backboard was wedged between the ladder and the shaft wall, stuck fast. The rope harness had tangled. Jamal was trying to free it while holding off Mrs. Baxter with his feet, and it wasn't working. She was too strong, and if she got onto the ladder, we'd all be trapped. Patricia did the only thing she could. Unclipped the harness. Let Trey drop. The backboard fell maybe 10 feet before Nathan and I caught it, barely, the impact knocking us both into the water. Trey didn't wake up. Kid was so far gone from fever and infection that maybe he never would. Above us, Jamal kicked free, started climbing down fast. Too fast. His foot slipped, caught a bracket wrong, and he tumbled past us into the deeper water below. Mrs. Baxter followed. Just dropped straight down the shaft like gravity was optional. Landed in a crouch in the water, started toward Jamal. Go! Nathan shoved Trey's backboard at me. Take the kids. Go east to the ambulance bay. Get out of the building. What about you? I'll hold them here. Just go. I grabbed Danny's hand, grabbed one end of Trey's backboard. Bridget got the other end. Her twins held onto her belt. We waded through the 2nd floor toward the east stairs while behind us Nathan Park. Good man, brave man, better than me. Bought us time we didn't deserve. The water was deeper than I thought. Waist high on me, chest high on the kids. That black smell was everywhere now, thick enough to taste. I could feel things bumping against my legs. Debris, medical equipment, other things I didn't want to think about. Danny kept his hand locked on my belt, and I kept the backboard level, and we moved through the corridor toward the east exit like we were wading through hell itself. Behind us, splashing, screaming that cut off too quick. Then silence worse than screaming. Don't look back, I told Danny. Told myself, just keep moving. The east stairwell doors were half submerged but still accessible. I kicked them open and we stumbled onto the landing. The stairs going down were underwater. The stairs going up led back toward the roof, toward more of them. Basement level, Patricia gasped. She'd made it down ahead of us, was already waist deep on the descending stairs, testing the depth. If we can get through to the ambulance bay, the garage doors should still be above the surge line. It's our only shot. We went down. The water rose with every step. Chest high, shoulder high. Danny couldn't touch bottom anymore, was swimming, and I held Trey's backboard above the water with one hand and Danny's collar with the other and prayed to gods I didn't believe in that we wouldn't all drown in a hospital basement. The basement corridor was a nightmare aquarium. Emergency lights underwater gave everything a green-black tint. Floating debris, chairs, computers, somebody's lunch bag from the break room. And bodies. Not moving, thank Christ, just floating face down in their scrubs and hospital gowns. I counted 6, didn't look at their faces, couldn't afford to know their names. The ambulance bay was ahead, big rolling doors that should have been closed, but one was stuck half open, bent off its track. Patricia's flashlight caught the gap, maybe 4 feet clearance. We'd have to duck under, hold our breath, pull ourselves through while carrying an unconscious kid and hoping nothing grabbed us from below. "I'll go first," Patricia said. "Make sure it's clear on the other side. Then send the twins. Then Danny. Then Trey. Ray, you're last. You're strongest. You can push him through if he gets stuck. What if you don't come back?" She smiled, sad, tired. "Then you'll know not to follow." She dove, disappeared under the half-open door. We waited in that fetid water, counting seconds, while hurricane wind howled through the gap and the building groaned, and I thought about how we'd left Nathan Park to die and Mr. Callahan to turn and Mrs. Callahan to watch it happen, and how I'd promised to get everyone out and I was failing, already failed. Patricia's hand emerged from the gap. Thumbs up. Bridget sent her twins through. They were good swimmers, Key's kids, grew up in the water. They made it look easy. Danny was next, and I held him close one more moment. "You know I love you, right? No matter what happens next, you know that?" "Dad, stop. You're scaring me more." "Good. Be scared. Scared keeps you alive. Now swim." He dove. I watched his small body slip under the door, lost sight of him for 3 terrible seconds, then saw Patricia pull him through on the other side. Just Trey left, and me. I grabbed the backboard, took the deepest breath I could manage, and ducked under. The world went dark and close and wrong. The door frame scraped my back. The water was so thick with silt and rot that I couldn't see 6 inches. I pulled forward, feeling for the gap, for the opening, for anything that meant outside and air, and the backboard caught, wedged in the door frame, stuck fast. I came up gasping on the inside, alone in the basement corridor. Tried pulling Trey through at a different angle. No good. The door had bent inward just enough to create a bottleneck, and the backboard was too wide. I could hear them on the other side. Patricia yelling for me to try again. Bridget offering to come back through and help. Danny crying, screaming for me, and Christ, that sound. I'd do anything to make that sound stop. But Trey was unconscious and dying, and I'd promised his father. I unstrapped him from the backboard, grabbed him under the arms. Kid weighed maybe 80 pounds, but in the water he was nothing. I positioned him in front of the gap, took another breath, and dove. This time I got him halfway through before his hospital gown caught on something. I surfaced on the inside again, yanked the gown off him. "Sorry, kid, modesty's the least of our problems." Dove again, pushed him through. Felt Patricia grab him from the other side. Now just me. I wedged myself into the gap, shoulders through, chest through, but my belt caught on the door frame, held me like the building itself didn't want to let me go. I tried to unbuckle it, but my hands were numb, couldn't feel the clasp, and I was running out of air, and I could hear something moving in the water behind me, something getting closer, and hands grabbed my wrists, Patricia and Bridget pulling. My belt ripped free and I tumbled through into the ambulance bay, into air and rain and life. "Dad!" Danny crashed into me, nearly knocked me back into the water. I held him while the world spun and my lungs burned, and somewhere in the distance the hurricane screamed like it was angry we'd escaped. The ambulance bay doors opened onto the east parking lot, which opened onto Grouper Street, which led uphill toward the interior of the quay. 2 feet of water in the street, maybe 3. Wadeable. The wind was still trying to murder us, and the rain was horizontal, but we could move. "Come on." Patricia had Trey over her shoulder in a fireman's carry. Bridget had her twins by the hands. Jamal hadn't made it. Nathan hadn't made it. Half the staff hadn't made it. But we were out of the building, and that had to be enough. We waded into the street. The water in the street was clearer than inside, just storm surge and rain. Not that black rot stink from the hospital, but it was deeper than I'd hoped. 3 feet in the parking lot became 4 feet in the street, became 5 feet where the road dipped near the drainage canal. Danny couldn't walk anymore. I carried him on my back, and he wrapped his arms around my neck tight enough to choke. And I didn't tell him to loosen up because frankly I needed that reminder that he was real and alive and still mine. Patricia led us east on Grouper, then north on Marlin when we hit the intersection, moving inland uphill away from the surge. The wind was insane. Every step felt like climbing a vertical wall. Bridget's twins were flagging, and Trey was probably dead weight by now. Literally, God help us, but we couldn't stop. Behind us, maybe 6 blocks back, I could see the hospital's emergency lights, could see shapes moving on the roof. More of them up there now, or maybe just the ones we'd left behind, and I tried not to think about Mr. Callahan or whether he'd already changed or whether his wife had. There, Bridget pointed. Ahead, maybe 2 blocks, the old Morrison Marina building. 3 stories, concrete, built in the 60s when they made things to last. Lights on in the upper windows. Real lights, not emergency reds. Generator power. Survivors. We stumbled toward it. The marina building's ground floor was flooded, but the stairs were accessible, and there were people on the 2nd floor landing, Old Man Morrison himself, plus maybe a dozen others. Locals who'd refused to evacuate. Tourists who'd gotten trapped. They had guns pointed at us until they recognized Patricia. Doc Whitmore. Morrison lowered his shotgun. Christ, we thought everyone at the hospital was dead. We've been monitoring emergency frequencies. Heard some crazy shit about an outbreak, about the patients. It's true. Patricia was already moving inside, laying Trey down on a dry floor for the first time in an hour. Waterborne pathogen, maybe prion-based, maybe something else. Anyone exposed shows symptoms within minutes. Increased aggression, loss of higher brain function, apparent immunity to pain. We've lost most of the hospital staff. How many got out? Patricia looked at our group. Me and Danny, Bridget and her twins, herself. 5 people out of a hospital that had 42 patients and 30 staff when the hurricane hit. This is it, she said. Morrison's face went gray. Jesus. Doc Chen was at that hospital, and Nurse Ramirez, and they didn't make it. I cut him off before he could name everyone we'd failed to save. What's your situation here? Generator holding? Food? Water? We're good for 3 days. Got the marina's backup generator running, fuel tanks full. Food from the bait shop, water from the bottled stuff we sell to tourists. Radio contact with Coast Guard and Monroe County. They're saying they'll try to evac us by boat once the surge drops. Maybe 8 hours. 8 hours. Same timeline they'd given us on the hospital roof. 8 hours ago? No, that was only 2 hours ago. Time was broken in my head, stretching and compressing wrong. I found a corner, set Danny down, checked him over. He had scrapes, bruises, was soaked and shaking but alive. Alive. I pulled him close and just held him while he cried, and I cried and Bridget cried over her twins, and Patricia tried to get Trey stabilized with whatever first aid supplies the marina had. Which wasn't much. Some bandages. A questionable bottle of expired antibiotics. Morphine from somebody's personal stash. Keys locals always have interesting medicine cabinets. She did what she could, but Trey was gray. Too gray. His breathing was shallow, and his lips had that blue tint. He needs surgery, Patricia said quietly, just to me. The appendix, the peritonitis, it's gone septic. Without proper intervention in the next few hours, he'll die. The Coast Guard won't be here in time. You know that. I did know that. Had known it since we left his parents on the roof. Since we dropped him down an elevator shaft and dunked him in contaminated water and carried him through a hurricane. We'd saved Trey from those things, but we hadn't saved him from his own failing body. Maybe there's another facility. I tried. Another hospital, a clinic, something with... Ray. She put her hand on my shoulder. Lower Keys Medical Center evacuated yesterday. The clinic on Big Pine is underwater. The hospital in Key West is Category 5 rated, but they're dealing with their own surge issues. There's nowhere to take him. And even if there was, we can't move him in this storm. So we just let him die? We make him comfortable. That's all we can do. I looked at Danny, sleeping finally, exhausted. Thought about Mr. Callahan, who'd stayed behind so his son could have a chance. Thought about Nathan Park, who'd held the line so we could escape. Thought about every patient I'd ever lost on the operating table. Every parent I'd had to face and say, I did everything I could. When they both knew I hadn't, I'd missed something or cut wrong or been too slow or too arrogant or too human. No, I said. No, there's got to be something. The marina has boats, right? If we can get him to Marathon, there's a surgical center there. They might still be operational. It's only 30 miles. Morrison heard me. Son, you can't take a boat out in this. You'd last maybe 5 minutes before the storm flipped you. That's if the surge doesn't smash you into the bridge pilings first. It's suicide. Then we wait for the surge to drop. That's 6 hours minimum. You said the kid has maybe 3. I looked at Patricia. She wouldn't meet my eyes, because she knew what I was thinking. Knew I was about to make a choice that would either save Trey Callahan or kill everyone in this building. The hospital, I said. The surgical wing is on the 2nd floor, east side. Should be above the worst of the flooding. If we go back, if we can get to the ore. Ray, that place is full of them. Maybe, or maybe they've moved. Maybe they're all on the roof waiting for the Coast Guard. Maybe we can slip in, get to the ore, do the surgery, get out. And maybe they're in every hallway hunting for fresh meat. You want to risk your son's life on maybe? I looked at Danny, at Bridget's twins, at all the people in this marina who'd survived because they'd been smart enough to hunker down and wait for rescue like sensible human beings. Then I looked at Trey Callahan, 9 years old, should have been playing Fortnite and complaining about homework. Instead, he was dying on a marina floor because I'd made bad choices all night, because I'd brought my son to work during a hurricane and set off a chain of events that had killed dozens. His father stayed behind so he could live, I said. I'm not letting that be for nothing. Ray, I'm a pediatric surgeon. This is what I do. If there's even a chance. There isn't. You know there isn't. You're going to get yourself killed trying to play hero for a kid who's probably already too far gone. She was right. Logically, rationally, medically right. Trey's odds were terrible even with a full surgical suite and a healthy team. With just me and whatever supplies we could salvage, in a building full of infected patients during a hurricane, the odds weren't terrible. They were 0. But I kept seeing Mr. Callahan's face. Kept hearing him say, keep Trey safe, whatever it takes. I'm going back, I said. Anyone wants to come with me, I won't stop you. Anyone wants to stay here where it's safe, I don't blame you. Silence. Wind howling outside. Then, I'll go. Bridget, I'm a surgical nurse. You'll need someone who knows the instruments. Bridget, your boys? Morrison will watch them, right? She stared at the old man until he nodded. They're safe here, but if there's a chance to save that kid, I have to try. I didn't become a nurse to hide in buildings. I turned to Patricia. She shook her head. Someone has to coordinate with the Coast Guard when they arrive. Someone has to be here to tell them what happened, where the contamination is, how to contain it. That's Chief of Staff duty. She paused. Also, I'm 63 and my knees are shot. I'd slow you down. Fair enough. I knelt next to Danny. He was awake now, watching me with those eyes. I have to go back to the hospital, I said. I have to try to save Trey. But you're staying here where it's safe with Morrison and Patricia. When the Coast Guard comes, you tell them everything that happened. You tell them about the water, about the patients, about... No, Danny, this isn't negotiable. You said we don't leave people. Not ever. You promised. His voice was shaking but firm. If you go back there, I go with you. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. It was too dangerous on the roof. It was too dangerous in the elevator shaft. It was too dangerous in the street. But we did it together. He grabbed my hand. You need me, Dad. You always need me. Otherwise, you make stupid decisions. 6 years old, and smarter than me. He's right, Bridget said softly. You do make stupid decisions. But sometimes stupid's all we've got. She looked at her twins, asleep now in Morrison's office, kissed them both, stood up. Let's go save a kid. We took what supplies we could, flashlights, a first aid kit, Morrison's shotgun with 5 shells. I showed Danny how to hold the flashlight so it didn't shake. Told him his job was to stay behind me and Bridget, no matter what happened, no exceptions. He nodded. Didn't believe I could protect him anymore. Had stopped believing that on the roof, maybe, or in the elevator shaft, or in the basement water. But he trusted me to try. That had to be enough. We left the marina heading south, back toward the hospital, into the wind and rain and darkness. The water in the streets had dropped maybe 6 inches. Surge was receding, storm moving past. That was good news. The bad news was what we'd find when we got back to Marco Reef Memorial. The hospital looked different now, darker. All the emergency lights had died. Just a few generator-powered spots on the upper floors. The ground floor windows were shattered, and things were moving inside. Shadows against shadows. Shapes that had been people. Service entrance, north side, I whispered. Luwading dok. We can get in through the utility corridor, come up through the central stairs to the second-floor surgical wing. If we move quiet, if we're lucky. We haven't been lucky all night, Bridget pointed out. Then I guess it's our turn. The loading dock was above the waterline, just barely. The door was unlocked, security being the least of anyone's concerns at this point. Inside, darkness, that smell, and the sound of water dripping from 1,000 broken pipes. We moved by flashlight, single file, me in front with the shotgun, Bridget in the middle, Danny bringing up the rear with his flashlight pointed at our feet so we wouldn't trip. The utility corridor ran the length of the building, serving as access to the mechanical systems, the generator room, the maintenance spaces. It was cramped and hot even with half the building flooded, and every shadow looked like something crouching. Every sound was footsteps, but we made it to the central stairs without seeing anyone. Anyone living or anyone dead or anyone in between. The stairs going up were wet but clear. Second floor landing ahead, door closed. I pressed my ear against it, listening. Nothing, or everything. Hard to tell over the hurricane and my own heartbeat trying to escape my skull. On 3, I mouthed. Bridget nodded. Danny gripped his flashlight like a weapon. I opened the door. The second floor hallway was underwater again. The surge had pushed up through the stairwells, was draining slow. Ankle deep now, enough to splash, enough to make noise. The surgical wing was east, maybe 50 yards. I could see the hors d'oeuvres ahead, those double swinging things with the round windows. Could also see something moving between us and them. 2 shapes. 3. Patients from the lower floors or staff or visitors, impossible to tell now. They'd all changed into the same basic thing. Bit. Fast. Wrong. They were feeding on something, hunched over, making sounds that might have been eating or might have been language in a frequency I couldn't process. One of them looked up, saw us. Run, I said. We splashed through the hallway. The things behind us screamed. Not words, just that hungry sound, and gave chase. I could hear them moving through the water. Too fast, way too fast. Bridget hit the hors d'oeuvres first. shoved them open. Danny slipped through. I turned, aimed the shotgun, fired. The blast was deafening in the enclosed space. Caught one of them center mass, should have blown it apart. Staggered, kept coming. I fired again. Hit its head this time. It went down, stayed down. 2 shells left. The other 2 were almost on me when Bridget yanked me through the doors. We slammed them shut, shoved a supply cabinet in front, and backed into the surgical suite while the things hit the doors hard enough to crack the windows. "Will that hold?" Danny asked. "No," I said, "but it doesn't have to hold forever, just long enough." The ore was a mess. Instruments scattered from when we'd evacuated earlier, the table tilted, blood and water on the floor. But the lights worked. Generator backup kicked in when I hit the switch. And the equipment was still here. Sterilizer, anesthesia machine, monitors, everything I'd need. Everything except time. "Bridget, get him on the table. Danny, find the surgical kit. Should be in the cabinet marked emergency supplies. I'll scrub in." They moved. I washed my hands in the industrial sink. 3 minutes of scrubbing, muscle memory from 10,000 surgeries. Behind us, the doors were bending. The things were smart enough to push together, applying consistent pressure. The cabinet would give way in maybe 20 minutes. I had to be done in 15. Tray on the table. Bridget got in 4, started, pushed fluids. I checked his vitals. BP barely there. Temp 104. Breathing shallow. Peritonitis had gone full systemic. This kid should have died hours ago. Only reason he hadn't was pure stubborn luck. I needed to keep that luck going. "General anesthesia is too risky," I said, thinking out loud. "His system's too compromised. We'll do local blocks and hope he stays unconscious from the fever." Bridget set me up with. Already on it. She was pulling instruments, organizing them like she'd done this 1,000 times, which she had. Good nurse. Great nurse. Why couldn't I remember if she was married? Did she have family besides the twins? Christ, I'd worked with her for 3 years and I barely knew her. I shook it off, focused, scalpel in hand. Danny watching from the corner, holding his flashlight steady even though the overhead lights were working now. Being useful because that's what I'd taught him. When you can't fix the scary thing, help someone who can. "Midline incision," I narrated, partly for Bridget, partly to keep myself calm. "Peritoneal cavities definitely compromised. Massive contamination visible. I'm going to need." The doors exploded inward. Not broke. Exploded. The cabinet went flying and 4 of them poured through, moving like water, like they were coordinated by something we couldn't see. Bridget screamed. Danny raised his flashlight like it could somehow help. I had a scalpel in one hand and an open abdomen in front of me and 2 shotgun shells that wouldn't be enough. "Bridget, take Danny. Get to the equipment alcove. Lock yourselves in." The alcove was where we stored backup supplies, had a security door that might hold. "I'll finish the surgery and—" "No." Bridget grabbed the shotgun from where I'd leaned it against the supply cart. Racked it. "You save him. I'll buy time." "You can't. I'm a good nurse, Ray. Let me do my job." She fired. Missed. The things were too fast. Fired again. Hit one, barely slowed it. The shotgun clicked empty and she swung it like a club, caught one across the face, and then they were on her. I grabbed Danny, shoved him toward the alcove. "Go. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Dad. Go." He ran. I heard the alcove door slam, heard the lock engage. Bridget was down. They were feeding. I had maybe seconds before they finished and came for me and Trey. So I did the only thing I could. I kept operating. Hands steady. Years of training. Locate the appendix, there, ruptured, necrotic. Remove it. Clean the contamination. Sutures. Quick, efficient, professional. Behind me, wet sounds, screaming that stopped, things moving. I tied off the last suture, closed the incision, dressed the wound, turned around. They were standing there, 4 of them, Bridget's body between us. They weren't moving, just watching, heads tilted like Mrs. Baxter's had been, like they were listening to something, or waiting. "Trey's clean," I said. Don't know why I was talking. Maybe because staying quiet meant accepting I was about to die. "The surgery's done. He's got a chance now. That's what we came for. So if you're going to kill me, get it over with." They didn't move. And then I understood. The contamination, the water, the prion or whatever it was, it spread through contact, through fluids, through bites. But Trey had been in that water, had been exposed for hours, should have changed like everyone else. But he'd been unconscious, fever-ridden, his immune system completely shut down fighting peritonitis. He couldn't be infected because his body wasn't processing anything. He was too sick. And I just cured him.
No, Ibrata.
No. Trey's eyes opened on the table behind me. Not his eyes. Not anymore. Black pupils blown wide, and that smile. He sat up. The fresh incision didn't matter. The trauma didn't matter. He was one of them now. And they'd used me to save him. I backed away from the table, from Trey, from all of them. My shoulders hit the supply cabinet and I had nowhere left to go. The alcove door was 10 feet away and I'd never make it. Danny was safe in there. That was something. That was everything. The things watched me. Trey tilted his head like the others, like they were all receiving the same signal. Then he spoke. Not words. Something between a gurgle and a growl that might have been language if humans were meant to hear it. The others responded. Same sound. Call and response. Pack communication. They started toward me. "Ray!" Patricia's voice from the hallway. "Ray, get down!" I dropped. She came through the shattered doors with Morrison's shotgun. Must have gone back to the marina for it. Started firing. Pump action, boom, boom, boom. These were proper shells, not the birdshot Morrison had given me. Slugs, big enough to actually drop them. She got 2 before the gun clicked empty. The others retreated, not scared, just tactical. Regrouping. Patricia grabbed my arm, hauled me up. "The alcove, come on. Danny's in there." "I know. That's why we're going." We ran. Hit the alcove door and I pounded on it. "Danny, open up. It's me." The lock clicked. Door opened 6 inches. Danny's face in the gap, pale and terrified. We shoved through and slammed it behind us. The door was solid steel, meant for medication storage, had a keypad lock that still worked on battery backup. Outside, sounds of them testing the door, scratching, pushing, but not breaking through. Not yet. The alcove was maybe 6 by 8 feet. Shelves of medical supplies, no windows, 1 door. We were trapped, but we were alive. "Patricia," I gasped. "How did you?" Morrison monitoring the radio. "Coast Guard's inbound, 30 minutes out. I figured you'd do something stupid and need rescue." She checked the shotgun. Empty. No more shells. "So where's Bridget?" I couldn't answer that. Danny buried his face against me. Patricia understood. Christ. And Trey. Changed. During the surgery. I didn't know. I thought. My voice broke. I saved him so they could have him. They used me. Maybe. Or maybe they're just opportunistic. Doesn't matter now. She checked her watch. 28 minutes until evac. We hold here, we'll be fine. That door won't hold 28 minutes. Then we find another way out. I looked around the alcove. No windows. No vents big enough for an adult, maybe not even for Danny. The only exit was through the door we'd locked, and there were at least 5 of them on the other side. "There is no other way out," I said. Patricia's expression went hard. "Then we make them think there is." She grabbed supplies off the shelves, alcohol, oxygen canisters, anything flammable. Started piling them by the door. "When they break through, we'll blow the door. Create enough chaos that we can run for the main stairs." It's not a great plan. It's a terrible plan. It's the only plan, unless you've got something better. I didn't. We waited, listened to them testing the door. Heard something heavy hit it. Maybe they were using equipment as a ram. The steel flexed but held. 5 minutes. 10. The scratching got worse. More methodical. They were learning. Were being taught. At 15 minutes, I heard voices from outside. Not the infected ones. Human voices. Radio chatter. "Coast Guard rescue. We have visual on the hospital. Multiple subjects on the roof. Copy that. Be advised subjects are hostile. Repeat, hostile. Clear to engage? Negative? Negative. Rescue personnel only. Extract survivors and bug out." The alcove door buckled. Whatever they were using as a ram was working. The steel was tearing along the frame. Maybe 5 more hits. "Get ready," Patricia said. Had a lighter in one hand, oxygen canister in the other. "When I blow this, grab Danny and run east. Don't stop. Don't look back. Get to the main stairs and get to the roof." "What about you?" "Someone's got to make sure this door actually blows." "Patricia." "I'm 63, Ray. I'm tired. And I'm not letting them take me like they took the others." She smiled. Same sad smile she'd given me in the marina. "Tell the Coast Guard what happened here. Tell them about the water. Make sure they quarantine the entire key. That's the chief of staff's job." 3 more hits. The door was almost through. "We don't leave people," I said, echoing what I told Danny on the roof. "That's what I told my son. I'm not leaving you." "You're not leaving me. I'm staying." The door buckled again. "Almost through now. Tell Morrison I'm sorry about the marina. Tell Bridget's boys their mother died a hero. And Ray, you're a good doctor. Don't let this break you." She shoved me toward the back of the alcove. Set the oxygen canister against the pile of flammables. Flicked the lighter. "Now run." The door exploded inward. I saw them pour through, saw Patricia throw herself at them with the lighter held high, saw the whole pile ignite in a bloom of fire and force that knocked me backward into shelving that collapsed and buried me in supplies and Danny screaming and everything going bright and loud and wrong. Then hands pulling me up. Not infected hands. Coast Guard hands. A rescue jumper in full gear. Flashlight blinding me. Shouting something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. More personnel behind him. They'd rappelled in through the windows, were clearing the floor with actual weapons, actual training. One of them had Danny. Was carrying him toward the shattered window where ropes hung from a helicopter hovering outside. I tried to follow, but my legs wouldn't work right. Smoke everywhere. Fire spreading. The building groaning. Someone grabbed me under the arms. Dragged me toward the window. Clipped me to a harness. The helicopter hauled us up into the rain and wind, and I watched the hospital fall away below. Flames starting to show through the upper windows. Shapes moving on the roof that weren't human anymore. The Coast Guard jumper was shouting questions at me, but I couldn't process words. Could only hold Danny and watch Marco Reef Memorial Hospital burn. Watch it take everything with it. The infected, the survivors we'd left behind. Patricia's body if there was anything left of it. Bridget's sacrifice, Nathan's stand, the Callahan's choice. All of it burning. The helicopter banked toward Marathon, toward safety. toward a world that still had hospitals and surgeries and normal problems like custody arrangements and child support and whether your 6-year-old would eat his chicken fingers. A world that didn't have patients who turned into monsters when exposed to contaminated storm surge. A world that didn't require doctors to choose between saving children and protecting their own sons. A world where staying behind actually meant something instead of just delaying the inevitable. We landed at Marathon Airport, which had been converted to an emergency triage center. Military vehicles everywhere. Guys in hazmat suits. The Coast Guard handed us off to someone in a CDC jacket who wanted to know about exposure, about symptoms, about what we'd seen. I told them everything. The water, the infections, the changes, how fast it spread, how the hospital fell. They took notes, asked follow-up questions, swabbed our mouths and took our blood and sent us to a quarantine tent where at least a dozen other survivors were waiting for test results. Danny sat next to me on a cot, wrapped in a trauma blanket that wasn't helping with the shock. His green eyes stared at nothing, or everything, hard to tell. "Dad," he said finally, "the bad thing already happened, didn't it? Like I said on the stairs. We just didn't know it yet." "Yeah," I admitted. "Yeah, it did." "When?" "I don't know, buddy. Maybe when the first patient drank the contaminated water. Maybe when the hurricane pushed the surge up higher than anyone predicted. Maybe when the CDC didn't evacuate the hospital before the storm hit, even though they knew something was wrong." I pulled him closer. "Maybe it was already too late before either of us got there. Then it wasn't your fault. What happened?" "Feels like it was." "Feelings are stupid," Mom says. "Facts matter more." He looked up at me. "Fact, you saved me. Fact, you tried to save Trey. Fact, you got us out. Those are the facts." 6 years old. When had he gotten so old? A CDC doctor came by an hour later with test results. We were clean. No infection.
No contamination.
24-hour observation just to be sure. But we could call family. Let them know we were alive. I called Melissa. She was hysterical, had been watching the news, had seen the reports about Marco Reef Memorial, about the containment failure, about the bodies they were still pulling from the wreckage. She screamed at me for 10 minutes about bringing Danny to work during a hurricane, about my irresponsibility, about how she'd always known I'd get him killed someday. She wasn't wrong. "Put him on," she finally said. "Let me talk to my son." I handed Danny the phone, watched him say, "I'm okay, Mom," in that flat voice kids get when they're lying to protect their parents. Watched him not mention Bridget or Patricia or the things in the water or the surgery on Trey Callahan. Just, yeah, it was scary, and Dad kept me safe, and I want to come home now. Melissa's new husband drove down that night to pick him up. Court order said I had Danny every other weekend, but everyone agreed this was a special circumstance. I'd get him back when the trauma faded. Maybe, if it faded, if the courts decided I was still a fit parent after this. If I decided I was still a fit parent after this. I watched them drive away, Danny in the back seat, face pressed against the window, not waving, and felt something break inside me that hadn't broken when the patients turned or when Nathan died or when Patricia blew herself up. Just cracked clean through, and I knew it would never heal right. The CDC kept me another 3 days. More tests, more questions, more guys in suits asking about the timeline, the water composition, the behavioral patterns. They were calling it reef syndrome. Prion-based, they thought, but with a viral vector. Something that had been dormant in the limestone aquifer for who knew how long, activated by the combination of storm surge salinity and temperature and God knew what else. We're finding trace elements in the water table going back years. One researcher told me. Low-level contamination that wouldn't trigger symptoms under normal circumstances. But when Hurricane Iris pushed 15 feet of warm seawater through the hospital's old plumbing system, concentrated the prion in the standing water, heated it to body temperature, perfect incubation conditions. So it was an accident, I said. Just bad luck. More like inevitable. The infrastructure down here has been failing for decades. Saltwater intrusion, coral die-off affecting the natural filtration, development disrupting the aquifer flow. Something like this was always going to happen. Iris just pulled the trigger. I thought about Mr. Callahan saying, keep Trey safe whatever it takes, and how I'd done exactly what he asked and it had turned his son into one of those things. Thought about Patricia saying, tell them about the water with her last breath, and how I told them, and it wouldn't bring back any of the 47 people who died in Marco Reef Memorial that night. 47 confirmed dead. Another 12 missing, presumed dead. Bridget Santos, Nathan Park, Jamal Thompson, Mrs. Baxter, Mr. Nguyen, the Callahans, the houseboat family, staff and patients whose names I was starting to forget already, which felt like another kind of death. They let me go on day 4 with a prescription for sleeping pills I wouldn't take and a referral to a trauma counselor I wouldn't call. Gave me a hotel voucher in Marathon since Islamaracha Key was under full quarantine, would be for months while they cleared the contamination. Told me the state medical board would be in touch about my license. Standard procedure after an incident like this, nothing personal. Everything was personal. I spent 2 weeks in that hotel room. Didn't shave. Didn't shower much. Watched the news coverage obsessively. Reef syndrome had been contained to Islamaracha Key. The quarantine had worked. The hospital had burned completely, taking most of the infected with it. The Coast Guard and CDC had cleared the remaining population, found another 8 infected hiding in flooded buildings, put them down before the condition could spread. Melissa's lawyer called. She was filing for full custody. Given the circumstances, she was confident the court would agree that my judgment was impaired, that Danny shouldn't be in my care. I could fight it if I wanted, but did I really want to put Danny through a custody battle after everything he'd been through? I didn't fight it. Morrison called from a FEMA shelter in Marathon. Wanted to know if I'd heard about Bridget's twins. Her sister was taking them in, up in Orlando. Good woman. The boys would be okay. Eventually. And did I know that they'd found Nathan Park's body in the basement, or what was left of it? He'd held that position for almost 20 minutes based on the timeline. 20 minutes of fighting them off so the rest of us could escape. They were putting him up for some kind of commendation. Morrison thought I should say something at the ceremony. I didn't go to the ceremony. The CDC called in week 3. The hospital wreckage had been cleared enough for forensic analysis. They'd found Patricia Whitmore's body, identified her by dental records, also found Trey Callahan. The fire had killed what the infection had made him into. They were releasing the bodies to next of kin for burial. Did I want to attend the services? I went to Patricia's funeral. Small service, mostly hospital staff who'd evacuated before the storm. A few family members from out of state. The CDC had ruled her death accidental, casualty of the containment breach. They didn't mention that she'd blown herself up to save me and Danny. Didn't seem appropriate. Didn't seem like enough either. I tried to go to Trey's funeral but couldn't make myself get out of the car. Sat in the parking lot of Our Lady of the Waters Catholic Church and watched Mr. Callahan's brother carry the small casket. They'd found his parents' bodies on the hospital roof, together like they'd promised. Family burial plot, all 3 of them in a row. I promised to keep Trey safe. Whatever it takes. The sleeping pills the CDC had given me were still in my hotel nightstand. I counted them one night around 2 a.m. when the dreams got too bad. Dreams of Danny in the water, Danny on the surgical table, Danny with those blown pupil eyes. 20 pills. Probably enough. But I kept thinking about what Danny had said in the quarantine tent. About feelings and facts. About how the bad thing was already happening before we knew it, which meant it wasn't my fault. He was wrong, of course. It was absolutely my fault. I'd brought him to the hospital. Kept him there. I dragged him through the elevator shaft and the flooded basement and the surgical wing where Bridget died. Every bad choice had been mine. But he'd survived. And he'd survived because I'd made those choices. Because I'd kept him close instead of sending him away. Because I'd held on to him in the water and caught him on the ladder and shoved him into that alcove before the door blew. Facts. I'd lost my medical license. The board made it official in week 4, pending a full review that everyone knew would just confirm the suspension. I'd lost my son. The custody hearing was a formality. Melissa got full custody with my visitation reduced to supervised only. I'd lost my home, couldn't afford the mortgage without the hospital salary, couldn't go back to Islamaracha anyway, would probably lose it to foreclosure. But Danny was alive. I put the pills back in the bottle. Didn't flush them, wasn't ready to be that optimistic, just put them back. The CDC offered me a consulting position. They were studying reef syndrome, trying to understand the transmission vectors, the incubation period, the potential for future outbreaks. They needed someone with direct exposure experience, someone who'd seen the progression firsthand. The pay was bad and the work was basically reliving the worst night of my life over and over, but it was something. I took it. Month 2, I got a letter from Danny. Melissa had let him write it, probably supervised every word. Said he missed me. Said he'd been having nightmares, but the therapist was helping. Said he'd been thinking about what I told him in the hospital, about how we don't leave people, and he understood now why I tried to save Trey even though it was dangerous. "You did the right thing, Dad," he wrote in his careful 6-year-old handwriting. "Even though it didn't work, you tried. That's what matters." I kept that letter. Read it maybe 100 times. Didn't make the nightmares stop. Nothing would make the nightmares stop. Not the sound of Bridget screaming or the smell of Patricia burning or the sight of Trey's infected eyes opening on that table. But it helped. A little. The CDC published their findings in month 3. Reef syndrome was prion-based, but with an RNA component that allowed for rapid transmission. The infection attacked the prefrontal cortex first, eliminating higher reasoning while leaving motor function and base instincts intact. Victims showed increased aggression, pack behavior, and apparent immunity to pain, all consistent with what I'd observed. The good news: the outbreak had been fully contained. Every infected individual had been accounted for. The contaminated water table in Islamaracha Key was being treated with experimental prion-degrading compounds. Early results were promising. The bad news: trace contamination had been found in water samples from 3 other Keys locations. Low level, probably harmless, but the potential was there. If another major hurricane hit, if the storm surge concentrated the prion again, if the conditions were right, could happen again. The CDC was recommending a complete overhaul of the Keys water infrastructure. Billions in funding that would probably never materialize. In the meantime, they were installing monitoring systems, early warning protocols, evacuation procedures, preparing for the next time instead of preventing it. I thought about calling someone, warning them, doing something, but who would I call? What would I say? The government knew, the scientists knew, and nobody was going to spend billions fixing a problem that might never happen again. Until it did. Month 4, Melissa let me see Danny. Supervised visit at a therapist's office in Marathon. Danny and me in a room with toys neither of us touched while a court-appointed social worker watched through a one-way mirror. We talked about school and his new house and whether he'd made any friends. Didn't talk about the hospital. Didn't talk about the water or the things that had been people or the smell of Patricia burning. Near the end of the hour, Danny looked up at me with those green eyes. His mother's eyes, the ones that caught lies. "Are you okay, Dad?" I wanted to lie, tell him I was fine, that grown-ups bounce back from trauma, that doctors were trained for this, that I'd processed everything and moved on and he shouldn't worry. "No," I said instead. "No, buddy, I'm not okay. I don't think I'm going to be okay for a long time. Maybe never." Because of what happened? Because I couldn't save everyone. Because I made bad choices. Because my voice broke. Because I keep seeing Trey on that table. keep seeing him change. And I know it wasn't really my fault. The infection was already in the water, the storm surge was always going to hit, the hospital was always going to flood. But it feels like my fault, like I could have done something different. Danny was quiet for a long time. Then, "You saved me though. That counts." "Does it? When 47 other people died?" "Yeah," he said. "It counts to me." The social worker ended the visit. Said Danny's time was up, that Melissa was waiting in the lobby. I hugged my son one more time. Too tight, too long, but he didn't complain, and watched him walk out of the therapy office and out of my daily life and into a future where I was the weekend dad who'd almost gotten him killed. The CDC moved me to a research facility in Miami in month 5. Bigger operation, more resources, better funding. They were synthesizing the prion structure, trying to develop a vaccine or at least a treatment. My job was to consult on behavioral patterns, help predict how infected individuals might respond in different scenarios. Basically, they wanted me to remember the worst night of my life in excruciating detail so they could write better containment protocols. I was good at it. Too good. The research director said I had an unusual ability to recall specific behavioral details, to predict response patterns. What he didn't say was that I was reliving that night every time I closed my eyes. So of course I remembered every detail. I dreamed about Mrs. Baxter climbing the stairs, about the houseboat family daughter with her black pupil eyes, about Nathan Park making his stand in the basement water, about Bridget swinging the shotgun, about Patricia's sad smile before she lit the oxygen, about Trey Callahan sitting up on the surgical table with my fresh incision across his abdomen and that terrible understanding smile. They'd used me. The infection or whatever intelligence drove it had used my medical skills to save a host, had understood that an unconscious, fever-ridden child couldn't be infected, had waited until I fixed him, had turned him the moment he could process the contamination. The CDC researchers said I was projecting intelligence onto a mindless pathogen, that prion didn't think or plan, that the timing was coincidence, biological opportunity, nothing more. But I'd seen that smile, that knowing smile. Month 6, Morrison called. The marina building had been cleared for re-entry. Key's quarantine was lifting, at least for Islamaracha. Most of the island was still condemned, but a few structures were deemed safe. He was going back. Wanted to know if I'd come with him, help him sort through what was salvageable. I went. The island looked dead. FEMA had cleared the worst of the debris, but buildings still stood empty, water-stained, silent. The hospital was gone completely. They demolished what the fire hadn't taken, scraped the foundation, sealed the ground with polymer concrete. A sign warned about contamination, about authorized personnel only. Morrison's marina looked better than I'd expected. The upper floors had survived, and the generator room was intact. We spent the day sorting through inventory, checking what could be saved. He talked about rebuilding, about how the island would come back, about how people were resilient. I didn't tell him that I checked the CDC water monitoring reports every day, that trace contamination was still showing up in random samples, that the treatment protocols weren't working as well as they'd hoped, that it was only a matter of time. We finished around sunset. Morrison offered me a beer from his personal stash. Miraculously, the mini fridge in his office had survived. We sat on the second-floor deck and watched the sun go down over water that looked normal, clean, harmless. "You ever think about coming back?" Morrison asked. "Setting up practice again? The Keys are going to need doctors when people start returning." "I lost my license." "Licenses can be reinstated. You saved lives that night, Ray. More than you lost." I thought about the numbers. 5 people had made it off that hospital roof alive. 5 out of 72 patients and staff. That was a failure rate of 93%. In surgery, Anything over 5% mortality was considered unacceptable. I don't think I can, I said. Every time I'd look at a patient, I'd remember. The ones you couldn't save. The ones I killed. I performed surgery on Trey Callahan knowing he'd been exposed to contaminated water. I should have realized, should have checked, should have had a crystal ball? Come on, Ray. You're a doctor, not a psychic. The CDC didn't even understand the infection vector at that point. How were you supposed to know? I couldn't answer that, because he was right logically. But logic didn't help at 3 a.m. when I woke up remembering Trey's smile. Morrison stood up, grabbed his keys. Think about it, anyway. Island's gonna need people who understand what happened here, who can spot the signs if it starts again. You're one of maybe 5 people on Earth with first-hand experience of reef syndrome. That's worth something. He left. I sat on the deck alone, watching the sunset fade to twilight, thinking about Danny's letter and Patricia's last words and whether coming back to the Keys would be healing or just reopening wounds that hadn't even started to scab over. My phone buzzed. Text from Melissa. Danny asked about you today. Wanted to know if you were okay. I told him you were working. He drew you a picture. I'll send it with his next letter. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, tell him I'm proud of him. Tell him he was the bravest person I've ever met. Tell him. I deleted it. Started over. Thanks for telling him. I miss him. Sent. The water below the marina deck was calm, clear. You couldn't see the contamination from the surface. Couldn't see the prion hiding in the limestone, waiting for the next storm surge to concentrate them, waiting for the next hospital full of vulnerable patients, waiting for the next person like me to make the same choices I'd made. I sat there until full dark, listening to the water lap against the pilings, and I couldn't tell if it was the ocean's natural rhythm or something else, something hungry, something patient, something that had learned from what happened at Marco Reef Memorial Hospital. The CDC had contained this outbreak, but the Keys were built on limestone and seawater and human arrogance. We'd build new hospitals, fill them with new patients, wait for the next hurricane. And when it came, not if someone else would make the same choices I'd made. Try to save everyone. Fail to save most. Go home with the survivors and wonder if it was worth it. I pulled out the bottle of sleeping pills. Still had them after all these months. Looked at them in the twilight, counted them again. Still 20, still probably enough, and thought about how easy it would be to just stop remembering. Then I thought about Danny asking if I was okay, drawing me pictures, writing me letters in his careful handwriting. You saved me, Dad. That counts. I put the pills back in my pocket, stood up, looked at the water one more time. I'm not done yet, I said to the ocean, to the contamination, to whatever intelligence might be listening. You didn't win. Not completely. The water didn't answer, just kept lapping at the pilings, patient and inevitable and hungry. I walked back to my rental car and drove away from Isla Maracha Key, away from the hospital ruins, away from the marina and the memories. But I couldn't drive away from the knowledge. It would happen again. Someone would have to be ready. And maybe that someone was still a pediatric surgeon named Raymond Voss who'd learned the hard way that you can't save everyone, but trying still matters. Even when it destroys you. Especially then. The CDC's monthly water report came through 7 months after the outbreak. I was in Miami, in my efficiency apartment that smelled like disinfectant and fear, reviewing behavioral data for the vaccine trials. New contamination spike detected in Big Pine Key. Concentration levels 40% higher than Isla Maracha baseline. Projected storm activity elevated for upcoming hurricane season. I stared at the report for a long time. Then I called Morrison. When you asked about coming back, I said when he answered. about helping rebuild. Is that offer still open? Ray? Yeah, of course. Why? Because you're right. The keys need someone who knows what to look for, what to do when, if it happens again. You sure? That's a lot to put on yourself. I thought about Danny's green eyes, about Patricia's sacrifice, about Nathan's stand and Bridget's courage and all the people who died because we weren't ready. I'm sure, I said. Someone has to remember. Might as well be me. I hung up, started packing. Didn't have much. The hotel room had become the efficiency apartment, but I'd never really unpacked. Still living like I was temporary, like I didn't deserve permanence after what had happened. Maybe I didn't. But Danny deserved a father who tried. The Keys deserved a doctor who understood. And the 47 dead deserved someone to carry their memory forward, to make sure their deaths meant something when the water rose again. I called Melissa, asked if Danny could visit me in the Keys once I was settled. Supervised visits, of course. Whatever made her comfortable. I just wanted him to see that I was still trying, still fighting. Still his father, even though I'd failed at keeping him safe that night. She said maybe in a few months. Let's see how things go. Maybe was better than no. I drove back to the Keys with the CDC water reports on the passenger seat and Morrison's contact information in my phone and a small photograph Danny had drawn. Me and him together, stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. The sun in the drawing was yellow and cheerful. Nothing like the red emergency lights or the black contaminated water or the burning hospital against the hurricane sky. But it was what Danny remembered wanting to be true. And maybe that was enough reason to try. The water would rise again. The contamination would spread again. People would die again. But I'd be ready. Or at least I'd fail less spectacularly next time. That was something. That had to be something. Because if it wasn't, if all the death and trauma and loss had been meaningless, then I'd given up my son and my career and my sanity for nothing. I couldn't accept that. So I drove south through the failing light, toward the Keys and the ocean and the contamination waiting in the limestone. Toward whatever came next. Ready or not.